Endgame's converged endpoint security platform is transforming security programs, their people, processes, and technology with the most powerful endpoint protection and simplest user experience, ensuring analysts of any skill level can stop targeted attacks before information theft. Endgame unifies prevention, detection, and threat hunting to stop known and unknown attacker behaviors at scale with a single agent. For more information, visit endgame.com. Domain tools help security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the Domain Tools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/domain tools. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. A couple of quick notes. This is the security news, but I wanted to introduce a new sponsor and an existing sponsor that has a new landing page. So our new sponsor for this segment is Recorded Future. That's right. You can, this episode is made possible by the generous support of Recorded Future, the real-time threat intelligence company whose patented machine learning technology continuously analyzes technical, open, and dark web sources to give security teams unmatched insight into emerging threats. I have visited Recorded Future and gotten demos from them. I've been impressed with the additional functionality that they've been adding onto their platform that really goes above and beyond what you would typically consider as threat intelligence. Their research team is top-notch. You can sign up for a free daily threat intelligence update at recordedfuture.com/security weekly. That's right, a daily threat intelligence update. If you're a SOC analyst or working in defense for an enterprise, probably want to subscribe to that. Sounds pretty awesome. Again, that's recordedfuture.com/security weekly. I also have an update for active countermeasures. Of course, producing a hunter, I was one of the founders for, active countermeasures.
I was going to say, wait, was?
Yes, no, am still. Although Chris Brenton largely is doing most of the work, leading development and sales as well, which is really awesome. The product looks great. One of the screens that I really like basically gives you a snapshot of, it tells you basically what was compromised and what was leaking out and beaconing and compromised in one screen, which is really awesome because that was our goal, right? One of our goals, and probably the most important one for me, was to have that. We have a new landing page. It is securityweekly.com/ACM. It's a brand new landing page, all of the content that we'll be collecting and working with them. The one that's on there is Chris Brenton's technical segment from, I think, Q4 last year about how to do threat hunting. He's got a great blog series, and we'll be working with the folks at ACM to produce that content together and bring it to you. Chris, again, was one of my instructors early on in the days at SANS. So to be able to work with him today and then see the new content he's producing, I'm like, everyone needs to check this out because Chris is just, to say he's a wealth of knowledge is an understatement. It's just awesome. It's awesome. He was one of my teachers, so...
Yeah, he's doing really good work. I just want to double down on that. Chris is really doing good work with the active countermeasure stuff. It's fantastic.
All righty, so let's jump into the security news. I just with the new year, how many articles did we see about predictions for 2019, the best of 2018, the worst of 2018, the top vulnerabilities of 20? It's just so. When I saw this article, it was titled "The Worst Hacks of 2018." I was kind of excited. I was like, I want to see and read about hacks that totally failed. Like, I want to see the worst ones that just totally failed. But no, as I will say to Wired, dear Wired, you made an error in this title. These are the best hacks of 2018, or maybe even the most successful hacks of 2018. I was really hoping for a list of hacks that totally failed. However, that would be an article that I would actually read, would be ones that actually failed, rather than this regurgitated crap. Because they start off with, oh, the Marriott breach. Like, yeah, we know it was bad.
Nobody would write an article about those types of breaches, Paul, and nobody would be accepted with a CFP at any conference in the world.
Yeah, but you learn more from your failures, and I think those that are reviewing the CFPs for a conference, take note, something different. You learn more from your failures than you do your success.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that would be an interesting article.
I agree. But
So,
it's not
anyway.
sexy. And
It's not. No,
fun,
you're
and it's
absolutely
not
right.
cool.
Yeah. Yes. So they got me. Anyway, Apple. So Patrick Wardle is basically saying that Apple is keeping malware from antivirus firms, and I don't have all of the details. Just what you can read in an article that's posted online for whatever that's worth. Patrick is of course a very reliable source. And therefore, I trust it more so than if it didn't have Patrick's or someone of that stature's name attached to it.
Right.
He said he analyzed a new strain of Mac malware called WinShift. He noticed that Apple had revoked the digital certificate that let the malware install on Macs, which is good. But then he checked VirusTotal, of course, the online repository of known malware, and only two of the some 60 odd antivirus malware detection engines could spot WinShift. His stance is that Apple did not share information about this malware with enough of the anti-malware industry in order for more than just 2 out of the 62, and there might even be more in VirusTotal, that are detecting this particular malware.
Well, damn them.
And I bet you could find more if you looked for artifacts in that digital certificate that was revoked. There likely could be other malware that might have been using that digital certificate, and you could pivot off that.
That is such a subjective statement, first of all. I
True.
mean,
yes. I'm
how
glad
many
you're taking.
times? Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad you're taking that side, Josh, because we agree with each other sometimes too much. So please.
I know it's crazy, but I mean, how many times as pen testers have we released something or we've used something, and suddenly we find one of the antivirus cartel has fucking written a signature for it, and you're like, what the fuck? This thing is just a tool, for Christ's sake, I just want to rant and rave right now.
Well, similar vein, Joff, my favorite is when you're doing a red team engagement and the ops team, the blue team doesn't know that you're doing a pen test or a red team engagement, as the case may be, and then they submit all of your domains to all over the place for blocking. And in fact, then your hosting provider contacts you and says, yeah, your shit is serving up malware. Like, actually, no, it's not.
But the difference is that you folks are creating malware with permission, right? Using it with permission.
Kind of under contract, right?
WinShift is the research so far, it says seems to target specific individuals in the Middle East as part of a state-sponsored espionage campaign.
Yeah.
You would think if you had evidence of that you wouldn't say, well, this is just someone that created a tool, and maybe we don't need to really report it because it's. But no, apparently someone had evidence. The article is vague about who had that evidence, but if let's just say speculatively that Apple had that evidence that it was part of a state-sponsored espionage campaign targeted at the Middle East. Wouldn't it, for the greater good, behoove them to then tell the AV community? What does Apple have to lose by doing that?
Right, because right now it's targeting the Middle East. Where is it going to target next?
Sure.
Well, it's the real problem. The real root of the problem here is it's a scattershot, right? I mean, we all know that the antivirus vendors are sort of trying to be everything to everyone, and when you try to be that kind of player, then you go wide, right? You don't really have a choice, right? And I get that, but sometimes it gets crazy, and I'm kind of referring back to the pen testing thing, but back to the original assertion: is Apple actually keeping things from them? I have a hard time with that.
What are you trying to say, John? Really? I mean, just cut to the chase.
Joff's just mad that when he develops a new piece of software that gets detected and then it gets in every AV, that he can't use it anymore and he's going to go back to the drawing board.
No,
that's the premise of what Joff's saying.
Knee deep into his gin and tonic.
Well,
this is the best we're going to get.
Eyeballs deep. I think it's eyeballs deep. But
eyeballs
anyway.
deep. I think both assertions are true. But to empathize with Larry, certainly we've had the same experience. We're ankles deep in a red team, or we're knee deep in a red team.
Eyeballs,
the blue team submits the samples of various things up to VirusTotal. It immediately gets distributed to the AV folks, and we also get the various perimeter proxy vendors on board, and then we get complaints come circle around.
Joff, isn't the goal not to get caught?
Agree.
I'm just busting your balls.
Well, what is Joff talking about right now?
Yeah, but my favorite part is though that
only the djinn knows. He is identifying with the djinn.
Even after you get caught, much after it's too late, and the engagement is over, and then they submit the URL.
Yes,
like
that. Then you can't use it on your next one.
Okay. Wasn't the djinn the name of like the Grand Poobah genie in I Dream of Jeannie?
It's been a long time since I watched reruns.
Not that old.
I Dream of Jeannie.
I think. Well,
reruns.
I watched the original show. What are you talking about?
You're a little older than I am, Jeff.
Is that a little or a lot?
I think the challenge with information sharing.
Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the challenge with there's kind of two elements to information sharing. There's the need to share it so that we can all protect ourselves. But but how valid is that information, and how long is it valid? So that's I think there's there's kind of both sides of that. So because if it's something that's generic, run of the mill, that can be that every vendor can prevent, then yeah, that's going to help. But of course, the bad guys are going to find another way to do it. So it's
did you say how long is that data?
Vendors. What?
Did you say how long is that data?
Well, no, I said how valid is the data, right? Because if I propagate a piece of data that says that some site is bad, right, and everybody blocks based on that, and the premise behind that data is false, then you've potentially done a denial of service on on somebody, right?
Yeah, and Damon, that's a great point. That point came up when file sharing first became really popular in the university. Joff, you remember those days, right?
Oh, yes,
I don't know if you had this similar conversation with folks at the university that you worked with, when an email would come in and they would just say, oh, that IP address is bad. It was doing bad things. I must report it. I must block it. I must punish that student. And I'm like, hold on, wait. What is preventing someone from just spoofing that email and telling me that IP address that belonged to that student was downloading pirated material? How do I confirm that? We have to do some level of validation before we act on it. And I think I've experienced, Damon, that firsthand.
Are you talking about attribution?
Attribution is hard. We all know this. Yes.
Yeah.
I think attribution is hard, but attribution is something that people get caught up in when they probably should back off a little bit and think about the overall context. Right?
Sure.
So, anyway, let's let Damon continue.
Yeah, and I think security vendors sometimes look at this data as something that's crown jewels or whatever, and might actually be something that's that's considered I don't know what's the word something proprietary, but the reality is that there's threats happening all the time, and and if you're just blocking based on a signature only, then you're going to get overrun by for the need for signatures. So you have to have other technologies in there that are maybe not signature based, and so I think it's
nailed it.
Yeah, that's it. There is you have to have many different layers to it, and signature, AV signatures, IPS, right? They're good thing. I think they're good in the sense that they're kind of I call them crap filters in the sense that they filter out a certain amount of crap, but there's false positives with any of that stuff, right? And there's things that are going to change and they have to be updated and all that. So it's not not just a simple thing. And by the way, these things get updated it used to be that if you updated the signatures once a day or once a week, you'd be fine. Now you need to do it continuously because there's just no way to keep up. So I think it's I think you have to have many different technologies, not just AV, not just IPS, but I think there's maybe, just my guess is that, maybe Apple thinks that this is, proprietary information. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I see in different, with the different vendors trying to share information amongst each other. I think there's that concern that something might be considered proprietary, and they might be able to use it as a leg up or something. And I don't, at the end of the day, the information's out there. It's just a question of whether you have it or not. And then, you should use what you can to to protect your environments. But it's I think that's the problem when you communicate information. It could be wrong, and that you could be blocking somebody inadvertently.
However, this information from Patrick Wardle is somewhat consistent with the way that Apple treats security incidents, vulnerabilities, and other such things. Very hush-hush. We don't want to tell anyone about anything. We just want you to have your mystical, magical MacBook and have it look pretty with a touch bar and everything.
Yeah, when Apple, Apple doesn't talk about security vulnerabilities until they've patched it, and they say, and if you read their, the iOS updates or Mac OS updates, it has very, very minimal information to tell you what exactly happened, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this is always the issue with with releasing signatures or whatever, is that they can be reverse engineered to go figure out what the vulnerability was, and that's always a concern, and so that you have to, so once the information is out there about how to protect against it, then there's always the potential to figure out how to reverse engineer it and go, oh, okay, well, where else does that rabbit hole go?
Yeah, so, I mean, and Damon, as you know, the flip side of that is someone else is likely figuring it out. I mean, just because, let's say, Apple finds a vulnerability doesn't mean they found it first, right? And if someone developed an exploit, doesn't mean that anyone knows about it other than maybe a small group of nefarious people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the calculus, I think, that goes into the decision about whether to release something or not, and how much information to release. And Apple's fairly conservative about the information they release, and it's I think a little bit more disclosure wouldn't hurt, but it's but yeah, Apple doesn't play by those rules, and so yeah, when you describe that story to me, it sounds like this is just the way Apple typically reacts to these things.
I just before we get to your story or others, I had like an I told you so moment. Hackers have hijacked smart TVs to promote PewDiePie. No, it says PewDiePie in the in the article title. I think I've read that before as Pew because whatever, but anyway, it's the YouTube channel where so the history behind this,
you read it as pubes,
or that, yes, but the history behind this is there was competing YouTube channels. There was a printer hack a while back that was they sent print jobs to all these printers that were exposed to the internet promoting the YouTube channel, which is an interesting marketing ploy to say the least. I don't know how effective it was for them. However, the latest round is looking for publicly exposed televisions and or Google Google, what is the Google streaming device that plugs into HDMI?
Google Home?
No, that plugs into Chromecast, thank you.
Chromecast,
and other even extended into other Android devices that support ADB service, the Android debugging service that lets you install applications over the network, among other things. Basically what they did was, and so the article doesn't get into a lot of good technical details. However, my estimation is like they scanned the internet. One of the ways they used was universal plug and play, that they could play a video or put an image up on people's TVs advertising for this YouTube channel. I speculated several years ago that attackers would monetize flaws in IoT devices by putting pop-ups on your televisions, that they monetize by putting pop-ups on your browsers, right? That the next level of monetization would be putting it on your smart devices. And why not? You're sitting there watching your TV. Now you've got pop-ups. People would start, my optimist in myself was saying people would care about security of their Internet of Things, especially their TVs, when they started seeing pop-up ads on them. And here we have today, there's thousands of devices on the internet that you can find. The one that was very concerning for me was the ADB service being exposed directly to the internet. Now they're preying on very much low-hanging fruit here.
Yeah.
But exposing your Android devices to the internet, whether it's Android TV, a Fire Stick, same thing. They're Android-based devices. They all support ADB in a pretty standard fashion from what I found. That, if you've also checked the box to install third-party applications that you don't trust, basically allows an attacker to install any kind of software they want on the system. ADB also allows other functionality with that they could put pop-up ads on. And here is a ridiculous use case for that. However, my fear is it could, well, maybe it's not a fear. It could start a trend, maybe get people to care about IoT security. In a small pocket.
Happen? I mean, how does it even happen that a Chromecast or whatever ends up being exposed to the internet? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. But
UPnP, baby. UPnP.
UPnP. It automatically is opening up those firewall rules.
Yeah,
well, I mean, Checkpoint firewalls must support.
Doesn't run UPnP.
Yeah, I mean, Checkpoint must support UPnP, right? You put a device on the network and it Checkpoint firewall.
No, it doesn't. None of our SD routers do that. I mean, that's crazy. It's like I know I actually just replaced the Wi-Fi in my house not too long ago, and of course, I saw that it had UPnP. I just kind of shook my head and went, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
This off.
It's very scary. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. There's a cigar lounge next door. That we help them with their systems whenever they need something or have trouble or implementing something new, and they had devices. UPnP was enabled from the router that the internet provider gave them, and he's like, "No, you don't need to do anything. I'm good. I can connect to my stuff." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I didn't write any firewall rules yet." He's like, "No, we're good." And it was UPnP, just like doesn't tell anyone, doesn't ask for permission. There's no authentication. Nothing had opened up firewall rules.
Universal pwn and pray.
UPnP is goatsy and fail. I mean, it's the definition of goatsy and
goatsy
fail.
And it's the fail plus the goatsy. I gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god. Yeah, that's like the first thing I turn off at a consumer router is UPnP, and Checkpoint thankfully doesn't support it, and it's why would you do that?
The flaw in my logic in my story is, unlike a browser, whether it's on your phone, tablet, computer, whatever, if you see a pop-up, the monetization happens when someone clicks on that.
Yep.
Largely.
And the reason why it still happens
is because people can make money when people
click on it.
And people make money when people click on it, or you could essentially trigger a click depending on there's vulnerabilities. But anyway.
Right. But the impressions to purchase rate on that stuff is still
you can pwn a lot of people. And but with the television or a Chromecast or Android TV or whatever type device, there's no, you're not browsing the web and clicking on stuff necessarily. I'm not to say it's impossible, but when you're watching TV, you're not necessarily browsing the web. Normally, you're using some kind of entertainment app or whatever to watch TV or movies. You're not browsing the web and clicking. So in that sense, my kind of theory is flawed. Who knows if this will take off in some other way. If attackers can figure out, especially if it's an easy way to monetize, we're going to see more of this.
Yeah, follow the money.
But I would say that the typical consumer, which you have to step out of, were security professionals that have some interest or some sort of knowledge or skill in terms of what we're talking about. The average consumer, I bought my big screen TV. I've got my this, my that, my other in my home, and it's really cool. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
As long as it works and does what I want it to do, I'm happy.
Yeah, I don't know and I don't care. And it's really what it comes down to with all of this stuff is we're and that's sometimes I think as security professionals we have to take a step back and go, we care about all this stuff because we see what the possibilities are, but most people just turn it on and it works and that's all they care about. So, how do we improve the state of things in that situation? Not sure.
It's not even improve the state of things. I mean, it goes back, we're talking about risk assessment from a consumer perspective. What are we risking? We're giving up some sort of privacy data. We're giving up our personal information, but for the most part, we give that to put on the hat of the consumer. We're giving up that data voluntarily on an ongoing regular basis. Because we get the better deal, we get the coupon, we get the targeted ads, whatever it is. Click, 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 accept. I want to run the app. I want to do this. I want to do that. I don't care what the ramifications are. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think we're already seeing these devices in everyone's homes that are behaving exactly the way Jeff described. I want to get to my Netflix or Hulu or whatever. And I'm just going to click through things. And I think as soon as the attackers find a really good way to monetize that, that it's going to impact the consumer in some way, whether that's with ads, whether that's with they're stealing accounts and causing some pain, that consumers are going to start to demand some type of protection from these devices and start to care about security. I think we're on the cusp or the edge of that particular problem.
I disagree. I don't think most consumers are even aware, let alone care. Maybe if they were aware, they would care. I don't think they're aware.
Yeah, but they're aware that most are aware they need some kind of antivirus solution on their computer because they know they'll get pop-ups and things will stop working. If it very clearly leads to a path of them not being able to use their device or suffering some fiduciary
But it's not from a security
harm.
perspective. It's from a user experience. Is how quickly can I get to what I want to get to?
I agree, Jeff. Yes, they're not caring about security. They're more caring about the usability aspect. And you're right. What I'm saying is when it impacts their ability to use the device, then they'll start caring. But not because of security, but because they can't use their device.
Right. It'll be operational degradation.
Yes.
It'll be operational degradation that drives the curiosity to begin with, that, hey, why is this thing not working? Which will then subsequently, with any hope, maybe we're being naive, drive a question as to, oh, why did that happen? And maybe it is security.
And hopefully shift the economics such that these devices start behaving more securely, that security is considered when in the architecture phase and securely deploying these devices. And it's not to say that all of them. I think certain vendors like Ring, I think Ring does a really good job of providing these type of devices that have not, I mean, it's security, but it's also integrity in the operational aspect that firmware updates are applied and all that stuff.
Well, I think what we're calling security maybe isn't security. And again, from the consumer perspective, most people don't care. Whether it's a privacy issue, a security issue, we already give away so much information willingly. As consumers, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, Facebook, whatever, we're happy to, you install a new app on your mobile device and you get the screen. Well, this app wants to access this, and this. Oh yeah, click through because I want to use the app. I don't care what you're asking for and what's the big deal. We as security professionals, we think twice, or we're like, I'm not clicking through on that. Forget that. I don't need it. But most typical consumers, their security is not in their DNA. It's not something they care about.
I think
neither is privacy. They say it is, but they're not really.
Yeah, but that's until it affects them in some way. I think that consumers do care about if, for example, someone steals their Netflix credentials and their Netflix account gets closed down because someone has done what I'm describing in this article and somehow abused it, right? They care.
But they don't care if somebody's using their Netflix credentials. They only care if they have access to
they care if they lose their access to their own account.
I saw something that was humorous the other day.
Yes.
Netflix was trying to figure out how 16 million people watched Bandersnatch with only 22 active Netflix accounts.
I saw a similar thing for, what is it? It's not Birdcage, it's Bird.
Bird Box.
Bird Box. Thank you. Yeah. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my God.
I'm enjoying the memes on the Bird Box and the Bird Snatch. What did you say it was?
Bird Box and Bandersnatch.
Bird Snatch is something totally different.
And
don't Google for that.
Black Mirror, their latest episode.
I've heard.
That's Bandersnatch.
Is okay.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose your own.
It's choose your own adventure.
What I found interesting too, to kind of relate back, I talked earlier about piracy, right?
Yep.
Is the torrents are making a resurgence in an article that I read because you have all of these individual providers now, like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime and Sling. Right, and then they all have their proprietary content. In other words, you can only watch this movie or TV show if you subscribe.
You can only get Man in the High Castle on Amazon.
Most people, myself included, don't want to maintain Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and Sling account and pay the monthly fees associated with all 4 of those services, as an example.
Yep.
So what it's done is people either pick one or none. I mean, maybe they're picking Kodi as their app of choice. and they're going out to torrents and pirating the content because nobody wants to subscribe to all those services. Maybe you are like myself. I used Hulu, right? But I don't want to go pay Netflix now to go watch a movie, right? So I'm either going to borrow someone's account or I'm going to find another way to get the content. So there's been this resurgence of privacy. Kind of goes back to regulation, creating a black market for
I've gotten to the point where I'm lazy, and that it used to be like, so to bring this full circle, many years ago, I wanted to watch what is the Nicolas Cage movie? National Treasure.
Good Lord, there's tons of them.
National Treasure, and I went to Blockbuster to rent it. Bring it full circle.
What?
Wow.
But yeah, this is bringing it. This is bringing it full circle.
Kids, back in the day, you'd have to go to the store and rent either a VHS tape, if you're really old, or a DVD from the store. Bring it home. Yeah. It was before DVDs. Same thing, DVD, but bigger and more analog.
Yeah. So we went to Blockbuster, and we went for a month to try to get it, and it was constantly rented. Couldn't get it.
Yep.
So I said, F this. I'm going to go, and I went to Newsgroups, and I downloaded it. And it was the best thing I ever did, because then I started watching movies downloaded, and I didn't have to wait, and I canceled my Blockbuster membership, and and then Blockbuster went out of business. And now I wanted to watch Die Hard on Christmas Eve.
Oh, because it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
thank you.
Because of course you did.
And I went to Amazon Prime, and they had it, and it was like rent for $3.99. Think. Done.
Yes.
Next finished.
There is that aspect to it.
Yes.
Amazon, I think, does that the best in terms of
ding, ding, ding,
you could go you could go pirate it, or you could just pay us like $3 or $4, and you're like, a lot of us, I think, make that decision. Like, is it worth like how much of my time is worth the $3 or $4 where I could just rent it?
It's gonna take me time to find it. It's gonna take me time to download it. I'm gonna have to extract it. I'm gonna have to compare the parts.
The right
I'm gonna have
format.
I'm gonna have to compare the parts. I might need to convert it. Then I'm gonna need to put it on my box. Then I'm gonna need to stream it. What's my bill rate? Rent it.
Rent it.
But again, I think our perception is skewed because as security professionals, I think we're more likely to go through that thought process, whereas the typical consumer is like, oh, I can download it here. They're not thinking whether it's free or legal, or whether it would be more morally pragmatic to pay the $3 to Amazon or Hulu or whatever. They're like, oh, I can get it here. I'm going to do it. Our perceptions are skewed as security professionals in more than one direction.
Sure. So, Paul, can you read for me the title of story number 8?
My story number 8?
Yes. Can you read for me the title?
Hackers make a fake hand to beat vain.
Stop!
What's interesting is this actually did not come from the register. This was from Motherboard. It was...
hackers make fake hand to beat vain
authentication. Now, the title's funny, but also we've covered, so every time there is a particular type of biometric authentication, we have covered a story about someone who it basically hacks their way around it.
It's an arms race. It's called playing whack-a-mole.
I mean, I think some of the first examples, Larry, were the silly putty for the fingerprint,
or the gummy bears,
so this is just an extension of that, and so there are some biometric readers that map the vein footprint in your hand.
Yep, or finger, or whichever. Yep.
So, and they created a fake hand, which to me, it looked like cake or cookies. It looked delicious.
It does.
It did look delicious.
Which begs the question: I can't believe I'm asking this. Is every male appendage, does it have a unique, however you would measure it?
Yes. Well, I mean,
fingerprint.
I will admit the fifth finger to unlock my iPhone may happen to be.
God, we don't need to know.
TMI.
Wait, TMI.
I got this from Twitchy. Like how long ago?
I know Twitchy was big into the biometric authentication bypass. He was one of the
showed
first
me that
ones,
trick, but not
early
he didn't
facial.
show it to me.
Now, Apple, admittedly, has done a very good job with facial recognition. More resilient, in my opinion, and all the stuff that I've seen over the years, more resilient than anything before. Way back in the day, I mean, we're talking about when Twitchy was on the show several years ago, more than 10 years ago, would print out pictures of people and use that for authentication. Now, the technology has evolved, and here is a story where at the
it has evolved.
Chaos Communications Congress, CCC, was where this was presented. I mean,
even better.
What are you gonna? My fear is like it looks yummy, and Jeffrey Dahmer ate my fake hand again.
Well, but the part that was really creepy about this to me is that we've and I want to round this out about the biometric thing, is that they were able to obtain samples to build the fake hand by using a DSLR camera, a modern camera, modern good camera, where they removed the infrared filter and took pictures at a distance of 5 meters. Wow. 15 feet.
That's, yeah.
To be able to recreate the vein images for the hand. Now, the part that I want to round this out about the biometrics is that what happens when your biometric info is out there and it's used as part of your credentials and it's compromised.
No, that's a privacy issue.
And the big thing, we talk about, you can't use passwords anymore. You need to use passphrases. And next thing will be, well, you need to use biometrics. Well, that's great. But when my biometrics get compromised, what can I change it to?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because, I mean, how many times and how often are we recorded as a normal, we're going through our day on, ATM cameras, highways cameras, intersection cameras.
My voice is my passport.
Right. I always think of that. Yep.
Or this podcast. I mean, we're all being recorded on this podcast, right? Sure. And we can't change our things, right? This is so. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine as one factor, but maybe not the only factor.
Yeah.
For authentication. So I think
how do I change the vein signature in my hand?
Yeah, you can't.
I can change my fingerprints with the belt sander. I mean,
well, if I can have a curmudgeon moment, it all boils down to there's no amount of technology that's going to fix this. Technology is creating as many problems as it's ostensibly fixing.
I want to talk about ransomware because Lee had this story as well. So I just want to set it up for Lee. Cloud hosting provider DataResolution.net was hit by the Ryuk ransomware. It's the same ransomware that's responsible for stopping newspaper production for those two people that still read newspapers.
Who's still printing newspapers?
Apparently, the LA Times and others, right, Lee?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they're printing and they've jobbed it out. I mean, there were papers from Boston that were being printed in LA that got hit by the ransomware because the ransomware was in grabbing the files, going to the typesetting systems.
And nobody other than your grandfather noticed.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't the end of the world that the paper was a few hours late. But what I saw, and I was trying to find it again because I can't find it, is that the path, apparently there was one of the newspapers had been acquired by another company, and the path was because the two networks for the companies were still interconnected, which I thought was rather interesting. And I'm really upset that I can't find the reference because that seems like
if you can't find it,
more
didn't
fun to
happen.
talk about it. Yeah,
he'll find it.
Well, I'm getting old. But anyway, I just thought, what the hell? Ransomware and printed papers, what a topic.
Mm-hmm. That said, I still get the printed paper.
Did you read it?
Yeah. Well, I read the best news that's fit to print, and that's on Sunday, and it's on the outside part in color. Mm-hmm. It's called the funny pages.
Yeah.
And my wife gets the only news that's fit to print. It's printed in color, and it's on the inside. It's called the coupons.
Yep.
That's the only reason why we get the paper is for the coupons.
Well, I would agree because finding coupons online is you're just asking for malware, basically.
So that's the other one my wife does is she does coupons on the internet, and she gets like 1,000 emails a day that she goes through, and it's ridiculous. But
sometimes you win.
She has lots of win.
Yep.
So we looked at getting the paper when we moved up here, and the least expensive paper we found was $300 a year, which is crazy.
Yep.
And like Larry, I read the colored printed part on the outside, and actually Shelley reads the real news.
Wow. Huh. Win-win.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's $300 a year win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, ours is about the same, $300 a year win. But honestly, the amount of money that my wife saves from clipping coupons from said paper is way more than $300 a year.
Sure.
So it's an investment that's worth it for us. In fact, we get the Saturday paper and we pick it up from the driveway. We take the bag off of it and we put it in the newspaper pile to use for when we paint and doing paper mache. It literally stays folded out of the bag into the pile.
Right.
Because that's the only way you can get the paper at the minimal subscription is Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
When I come to the studio, which is relatively infrequently these days, the hotel that I stay at locally, they have a USA Today and whatever the Rhode Island local paper is. I grab multiple copies simply because I bring them home because I use newspaper to light my charcoal grill and light my fireplace.
Right.
Yep. And it's great for the animals too.
Yep.
This is true. Anyway,
the coolest thing about the hack was that those late printed papers were printed like without death notices and classified ads, so they were really thin. It was just news.
Right.
Can you imagine getting news without any extra pop-ups or ads? Or that's crazy, right?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. How do
you do a pop-up in a printed newspaper?
Oh, okay. Well,
haven't you read those books as a kid?
Crap fall out on you.
What's the equivalent?
I just thought it was interesting that there was articles that covered two different breaches, but it was the same strain of ransomware that seemed to be having some success very early or late in 2018 and early in 2019 in multiple different industries. I mean, one was dataresolution.net and the other was with print companies, and it was the same exact ransomware. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But so seriously, as we've talked about, risk and sort of identifying your why, as Damon, why are we doing this? From a pragmatically, a print newspaper, which I think most of us would agree is eventually going away altogether. Why would we care? How much do you invest in trying to mitigate any kind of consequence or prevent ransomware from affecting a printed newspaper? It's kind of a fun thing to talk about, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, who cares? It's going away. Who even reads this? Mm-hmm. Which realistically is part of a risk assessment.
But it could be that getting into the ransomware getting into that one part of the environment might lead to some things that they do care about. So it's so to say that it's just because it's a newspaper that we don't care about it is I think it's just a little bit short-sighted. But it's not. But it's have to understand the context of that in the bigger scheme of things. And of course you're not.
Well, it's not so much short-sighted. It's all of this is an economic decision. You got to spend money to prevent. You got to spend money to mitigate. You got to spend money to recover. So from an economic perspective, how much do you invest in trying to prevent this from happening versus you set aside some money for when weird things happen?
Yeah, of course, and I think that's always the issue with news stories like this is that we don't understand the bigger context. It's you get the oh my god some newspaper got compromised with ransomware. Well, yeah, so what's the bigger picture and what can we learn from it? I think that that's a much bigger issue that we don't see in a lot of these stories. Is okay, well what lessons can we really learn from it other than okay something got compromised? Well, okay, well yeah, things get compromised every day. What can I as an organization take away from that and apply to my environment and it's just we're not so I think that's the bigger issue with these stories is that we don't get enough information to make an informed decision about what we should do as a result of that happening.
I think Dave, I think attackers think that there's some monetary benefit to performing this attack, and even though while we'll kind of poo-poo the print, right, obviously there's still people that read print and there's companies making money off of that print, and therefore they're willing to pay a ransom. My story number 4 talks about a different issue where we really don't know the value of the data just yet. However, hackers have attempted to, well, they say hackers, I like to say attackers, attempt to sell stolen 9/11 documents. Now, the demands are epic. They have released like a bunch of the data and it's all encrypted, and it's encrypted in like different chunks, and the longer they take to pay, then they'll release an encryption key which it decrypts a portion of the data. If they still don't pay, then they release a decryption key for the rest of the data, and that's how they've decided to roll. And it's not just the insurance companies, but any political parties or anyone who was involved with the litigation surrounding 9/11. There was a massive data breach, multiple gigabytes of information about 9/11. We don't know what could come of that. Reading the article, I was like, so, like, is there a conspiracy? Like, what do people have to lose? Maybe they saw something in the data that they thought was warranted, or maybe not. Maybe they're just demanding a ransom and hoping to get it. I don't know.
So I have a couple fractured thoughts on sort of this general topic. Something that I've talked about in presentations I've given in conferences the last year or so is, and the name of the talk is, does DoD level security work in the real world? One of the things I point out is what we don't do in the commercial world so much is sort of assign a value to data. We identify data as valuable in terms of, well, this is company proprietary, but we don't talk about it in terms of sort of its shelf life, if you will. Is and the example I give is, again, I come from a DoD perspective where my customer primarily was the military. So if you're a military unit on the battlefield and you're trying to call in an airstrike on an enemy position, the coordinates that you're asking to have the airstrike, whether it's a bomber or a drone, the coordinates that you're sending that's saying, we need you to drop bombs on this location, that's really, really, really sensitive, critical information for about a half an hour, however long as it takes to do the bombing run. But after the bombing run has happened, the fact that information that you sent, sort of grid coordinates, GPS coordinates, the fact that information is out there, it doesn't really matter if anybody knows what it was because it already happened. But what we've never really, I think, captured in the commercial world is this concept of whether data is sensitive, but how long is it sensitive? How long do we need to protect it? What is the shelf life or the life expectancy of the sensitivity or the confidentiality of data? So this is a good example. My first thought, just not having read the article, is like, who cares about any, 9/11 was 18 years ago. What is critical or sensitive about any data? But, you're talking about lawsuits, you're talking about, litigation that's occurring. So there is some sort of sensitivity to it.
A couple more stories before we close it out. This was a really long show.
It is a really long show.
Title of this article: Hope you're over that New Year's hangover because there's an Adobe PDF app patch to install. My thoughts are there's always a patch to install. So every time you have a hangover, you can likely install a patch. When you don't have a hangover, you can install a patch. When you're drunk, you can try to install a patch. If you're using Adobe Reader for PDFs, you must be drunk. And that is all.
It wouldn't be a new year if there wasn't an Adobe vulnerability.
Very true.
That's right.
I also wanted to talk about turning your house into a Doom level with a Roomba. This is just, I friggin' love this. It's called Doomba, which further makes me love it. Created by game engineer and programmer Rich Whitehouse, it's designed to turn the sensors of one of the newer Roomba models, the Roomba 980, into a real-life map-making tool that can inject some demon slaying into your home. It's also a great way to create a map of a place that you might want to rob. Although, kids, stealing is wrong, but it's a cool idea.
For the record, also Roomba and iRobot are doing better maps of where your Roomba actually vacuums and such in the house, and actually is storing those floor plans.
Oh, so like it can tell you, like, I missed these spots?
Yep.
That's awesome.
And it builds the floor plans.
I'm worried about that because when I run my electronic, I have a lot of robotic vacuums. I was early on the iRobot Roomba front. I've had pets for a really long time, and they're awesome at that. And I worry about. I'm like, what? How do I know where it missed?
They're also awesome when you have puppies that aren't quite potty trained yet.
Well, so that's a different level of awesome when they run over poop. If they run over pet poop,
Roomba and poop doesn't go well together. But I just think
I've been there at least twice.
Talk about spreading the love.
Spreading, yes.
I wouldn't exactly call it love.
Well, it's an shit moment for sure.
That's right. That's right. Mapping your suckage, though, in general, is very important.
Hey, can Joff take us out tonight?
I think I want to.
Let's let Joff take us out.
You know what?
I say we do it.
If it's okay with Larry, Joff can take us out.
Do it.
All right, Joff. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Joff, take us out.
All right, Happy New Year, Happy New Year.
You're fired.
Yeah, over and out.